This is a news report from Mario Newfall. He says the Pentagon has just briefed Trump on the most complex military operation in American history. The plan is to fly hundreds of troops into Iran, parachute the 82nd Airborne Division to secure the perimeter, build a runway, bring in heavy excavation equipment to blast 300 feet of rubble, send Delta Force and SEAL in wearing hazmat suits to blow torches, saws, and breach the underground tunnels, locate and extract 1,000 pounds of uranium sealed in cylinders while checking the booby traps and checking for booby traps and decoys, decontaminate everything, then airlift it all with through hostile space. This would take weeks to months under constant missile and drone fire, with only a few dozen troops the entire military trained to handle nuclear material retrieval. This is like one of the dream missions, not dream missions because it's like a nightmare missions, but it's one of the few missions that Delta trains for. Delta, most what they do is train other people and do like apocalyptic scenarios like this is what they train for. And This is, let me see, under constant, with only a few dozen troops in the entire military that can handle this. Former defense official put it perfectly. It starts to look like you're not just buying a car on the lot, you're buying the entire assembly line. And yesterday, Trump told Reuters he doesn't care about the uranium before because it's so far underground. Now, what does this tell me? It tells me he might do it because he said he's not going to do it. But what does this really mean? Will he get it? Won't he get it? I think it means it's still a priority. We're still talking about the reasons for invasion. We'll still put it in there that this is an important thing. It's so far down that they can't get it. All right. So, he's saying, look, this side of it is safe. We're not sending the troops to do this, but they do have the capacity to make it. And another thing I'd say is if we were going to do something like this, you would have to have either regime change or several cities in the middle of revolution, in the middle of shifting the government. They would have to be so busy with revolts in every city and every city being taken over and maybe some armed Iranians taking over. You'd have to either do it in the middle of that scenario right after strikes, or you wait for regime change. And I'm leaning more towards they're gonna wait for the Iranians to choose new leadership.
How would they be defending if they don't do that? If they go in, like if they want to, Lindsey Graham said, create a death circle. By the way, when President Trump said, I don't think President Trump said he doesn't care about the uranium. I think he said we don't need the uranium. Not he cares about the uranium a lot. He says like Americans don't need it. Like once we get it, we're gonna destroy it. He doesn't care about it in the sense that we don't want it ourselves, not in the sense that we don't care about it being inside Iran. That's what I got from
So,
it. Yeah.
do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
That's what the report says. It says that's what he says in the report. This is from Mario Newfall. I can put the link in again so you guys can read it. Right? How would this be done? Okay, I love the scenario. Right? I don't love doing it, but I love thinking about it. Right? So what you would do is you would do this immediately after strikes. So we dropped 1,300 last time, 13,000 last time. We would drop, let's say 39,000. Right? You go get every IRGC equipment commander in every in-house, outhouse, doghouse in all of Iran. You just bomb everything. Immediately following that, you have Chinooks, you have Ospreys fly in with troops, not to one city, to a lot of different cities where you would already have some support and start putting in troops so that the IRGC is worried about 20 cities falling, not one, right? So they would be so busy with all of that that their attention wouldn't be on that uranium. They'd be more worried about existing, right? In the middle of that, you would also have to have lots of air support, an incredible amount of air support. You would need those supersonics because supersonics from the bone, the B1, would be able to react fast to anything on the ground, especially artillery, which would be the most dangerous thing in this type of scenario. And what other things that you would need? You would need those. That what was it called? It was a CRAM. It's the big. It's like a big turret like a Gatling gun that shoots down drones, because the first thing they would do would be send drones, right? But if you're so worried about controlling your cities, ERAM, that thing, you would be so worried about controlling your cities. So that's where the doubt would come in. Are they going to go full out on trying to hold this uranium when they can't even hold their own cities? They're about to have a revolt. That's when you would do it. You would be arming the Iranian people, start leading commandos in every city. Not just, you can start with one city, sure, but you're not going to stop at one city, because the second you stop at one city, that city's a giant target, right? What you would want to do is have 10, 20 cities that are revolting, 10, 20 cities where you have the strongest support, and have them start being armed and coming in towards the power centers of the IRGC, surrounding them, locking them out, right? Is this going to happen? I don't think so. I think we're going to wait for regime change. Is it possible to do? Of course it is. We've done harder things. Is it's risky? Some people would die, which a lot of us that sign up were ready to die. Like right now, if I could, I would go. And if I die, I die. No big deal. It's my life to sign away. And if I think I've died for a good cause, I die happy. I die doing something that I believe will lead to a better tomorrow. There's a lot of people that think like me. That's not just me. That's the attitude with a lot of people that sign up. Sometimes we're misused. I would not want that for them or me, but it's not like out of the question. We just don't want to be wasted. That's it's not that we don't want to waste our troops. Yes, that's a good question to ask, but there's no war with zero. We try, but zero deaths is an impossible task sometimes. But this is just, we're wargaming this out in our brains. We're not supposed to take this super serious. We're just giving an, how would this happen? Well, we're having a little brainstorm, a little thought experiment, just for funsies, right? But the whole point of this is that either scenario leads to the freedom of Iran.
Yeah, so obviously this can be done, but the question is not whether or not it can be done. The question is, can it be done without losing American soldiers' lives? And if there is a better option, and I agree that the better option is to do it with regime change, like focusing on regime change, so you're not putting American soldiers unnecessarily in harm's way. I mean, again, I know that obviously the American soldiers are there because they want to serve, and that's what they there for. But obviously, I think waiting for a regime change, like focusing on regime change, and then it would be, it would be, that would be the more responsible thing to do, because I know, again, this is, I might be exaggerating this, but somebody could tell me if I'm exaggerating. This looks like the most complicated military slash engineering operations that has ever been in history. And obviously, if any country could do it, it's the United States, and no other country could pull off anything like this. And there's so many different elements to it, the military side of it, but also the engineering side of it. Also, the fact that your multiple dark periods passes, like this is going to be multiple days. This is not, a lot of people are like, oh, we went in and served their soldiers. Yeah, that was one dark period. That was one dark period. Given that this is multiple days, there's going to be so many days that you're under heavy, like the Islamic Republic is going to come at you with everything they got, right? So I was looking into how you could protect, if you want to go in before regime change to do this, how could United States provide cover, defend their ground team? So the things that they need to do is complete air superiority, electronic warfare, drone overwatch, standoff munitions, and airborne battle management, which is so complete air superiority. The military would establish 24/7 Overwatch, Umbrella, F-35, and F-22 stealth fighters would clear the airspace, drawing enemy fire and destroying surface to air missile threats before they could target the troops. And then we have electronic warfare, aircraft, aircrafts like the EA-37 Compass Call would blanket the area, jamming Iranian communication, air defense networks, and coastal radars, so the enemy forces are effectively blinded and unable to coordinate. Then we have the drone overwatch. Unmanned aircraft provide real time intel and close air support. And guys, remember, you have to do this for so many days continuously, right? It's not like in and out kind of situation. updates within the past 24 hours. Okay, so guys, the U.S. is basically has lost roughly 20% of its MQ-9 Reaper drone fleet to advanced to. Okay, so this is highlights just how heavy the contested and dangerous the airspace is right now. So this is something that maybe is some people suggest that the U.S. needs to restockpile these before they could do any operations like this. Again, we given what we saw, everything that does move into the region, I think they might have already done that. And then aircraft and naval ships would use precision guided weapons like the joint air to ground missile and small diameter bombs to destroy approaching Iranian reinforcement from miles away without putting launch platforms at risk. And then we also have airborne battle management command planes like the E3 Sentry ACS would act as the mission's floating brain, managing the battlefield and feeding instant threat data directly to the extraction team on the ground. Okay. I have to double check
Okay.
this 24-hour update to see if this is true before I read it. But yeah, go on. Who wants to respond?
Let me go into the responses. First, Jose.
Only problem with that report is the fact that it got, if it's real,
Can't
it got
hear
leaked.
I can hear.
I can hear. Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay. My only part with the report sketch is that it got leaked to a news source. And for that kind of detail, it was leaked at the same time the president was being briefed on it. So that right there tells me problem. Okay. Second, it would have to be for the long game. I do not, if a third of what the IRGC has been saying is true, that they got their missiles opened up, we didn't hit all of their silos, they opened them up again, they got missiles out again, they're going to get help from the Russians and the Chinese satellite help, tell them exactly where those heavy materials are going to be if we do it at the same time. That's going to be a massive problem because we know that they've used against their own people chemical warfare. It's going to be awfully hot for all those soldiers to be in hazmat gear to guarantee they're not in a chemical warfare situation. Because we are coming up on summer in the United States, and summer should be coming up in Iran as well, just from location on the surface. So heads up, be careful, but I think we need to wait until all the way till the very end when probably starts forming a government and then go in. We have to take that. We cannot take the risk. We cannot take the risk that we're going in thinking we actually wiped out everything that we wiped out. Because already we're seeing some reports, and there was a British guy on a television station, an air general, one of the air commanders, saying that just because they had control of the skies before doesn't mean they have it now. Flat out. Okay, he's a Brit. Fine. They're full of fine. But we have to be ready for everything. We cannot assume shit. And that's why I think going in early is a mistake. And I don't know for sure if I would trust that report just because it came out. That's all.
Okay, over to you, Guy.
So a couple of points. First, a bit back to the last topic. Apparently, Don Jr.'s wedding is in the Caribbean, so you would definitely need a bunch of coordination, and canceling that coordination would leak. That's just as an aside. I agree that it's ideal to save it for the end. We have seen, apparently, some people argue, we don't know why, we don't know how, that it wouldn't be as difficult to extract the uranium as initially thought, but I have no way to tell either way. Considering that this operation, like, you can continue for a while, I don't think, at the very least, you don't need you need to have some plan for extraction. You don't need to apply it initially. You can wait and see how things shake out. And then if you feel like, okay, the regime is not changing or not changing fast enough, then you can do whatever you need to do to safeguard the troops. Another thing that was mentioned is the idea of multiple cities, and that's something I've been meaning to say for a while now. I don't think the idea of taking over one city is going to be good, because the advantage that the Iranian people have is the numbers, and so you have to flood the regime so that they don't have enough manpower to handle everything. And that's sort of what happened in January as well. You had like a couple of cities. Oh, this city's liberated. This city's liberated, and they didn't really have the manpower to handle that. So whatever you do, I don't think you can do it in one city, and I don't think you can do it in one region either. Especially since even if you take over, like you need a lot of area to actually prevent the blocking of Hormuz. You need like 100 kilometers from the coast across all the relevant areas. So I think the Hormuz play is a later play. And first, you have to flood the region with emergency situations where a bunch of cities are being liberated all at once. So yeah, what I got.
Wait, Guy, do you is this just your recommendation, or do you see any indications of this being the plan, or is this just your idea?
No, that's my recommendation. Like if I were to suggest something, that I would not focus on one city. I would focus on several distinct and far away.
But what would you do to get these cities to come out? Like, what would be your plan?
So theoretically, you would arm the people from several vectors, let's say from the borders.
But how would you do that from the borders? That would be
so like sort of like the idea that you had with the Kurds in Iraq. You don't necessarily need the Kurds for that, but the Azerbaijanis can do something from the north. Some either American soldiers or something. Some partners from the west can give it to the Iranian Kurds.
So the thing is that the problem is that those areas, the only people, because you can't just give it to random Kurdish people or Azerbaijani people, because they don't know, what do I do with this? That's why they went, unfortunately, with the separatist groups, right? Because they're like, these guys have an army, they know how to fight. And we don't want to repeat that mistake, right? So you can't just be like, hey guys, here's some guns, right? That doesn't work, in my opinion. That's why I think you need to create bases where people come to get vetted, trained, and then armed. And it's really difficult to do this in multiple areas. And I don't like other than southern Iran, where the Americans could set up their own area where they have liberated. There's nobody on the Iran-Iraq border, or on the, I don't know, Iran-Turkey border, or Iran-Pakistan border. Like, who would set up this operation? I think it's more complicated than just like, here's some weapons. There needs to be a vetting, training, and then arming process. And for that, you need a military base or a base of operations that could be organized. It's not just random, here's some guns, right?
So here's my retort. First of all, we do have bases of operation in Iraq for the U.S. Army, and in Azerbaijan, I don't know if the literal bases, but you have set up logistics operations there. And the people you arm on the other side are going to be, you already have agents. You have many agents for the CIA, for Mossad, and you let them handle the operation within each city.
Where, in Azerbaijan?
No. From Azerbaijan. I mean, it's easy for the Americans to have presence in those countries because they're.
So that would be so if they have a base in Azerbaijan or Iraq, that you do this, that would be a declaration of war by Azerbaijan against the regime, or Iraq against the regime. And I don't think the governments of Azerbaijan, Turkey, or Iraq, or Pakistan would be comfortable with that, right?
Israel had a base in Iraq for several weeks and no one knew about it.
But that base, you can't do that on the. Okay, so again, they didn't know about it, and as soon as they found about it, they had to abandon it, right? So imagine having a base on the border of Iran and trying to make it operational for multiple days and multiple months even, right? And now everybody knows about it. And that is that base that you mentioned in Iraq. That's why they had to keep that secret, because as soon as people find out about it, you have to shut it down and leave. So how are you going to do it? How are you going to be able to continue operating a base that now everybody knows about,
So
especially on
I'm
the
not.
border?
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I don't think this needs to be. You're not going to train the people there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's a place from which you bring in the arms into several different
Okay,
cities
but you
into
have to
your
the
operatives to
people.
have
You
there.
have to tell people that here, like, how do you tell people that there's guns here without letting the Iraqis and the regime find out? Like how? Like let's say, like, hey guys, we have guns
You
here.
have.
Yeah.
You already have the people you can trust there. You have your agents, right? They can
Okay,
set up.
the numbers you're thinking of is good for special operations. If you're talking about like arming a certain number of people, I mean, Mossad has already done that inside Iran many times, right?
Right.
But those numbers that you're thinking of are for special operations, not like a on the ground military campaign that it could be done by the Iranian people, right? If you want
No,
a
but
wide
the
scale,
border.
yeah.
The border cities, like I'm going off of what I saw in January. I'm not that much of an expert, and from listening to you and to Sim Goldie, but from my understanding, there's very sparse IRGC presence in the periphery of Iran,
Yeah,
and you
it
can
wouldn't
find like
be,
cities.
but that would as soon as they find out there's a base there actively telling people to come get your guns here, then it wouldn't be. Then there would be a lot of
I'm not.
IRGC there. Yeah.
I'm not saying you. So that's why you do it in several cities simultaneously. Then you flood it and like, okay, we don't know where to go. They have several liberated cities that, like in January, some cities were liberated without a single shot being fired
So
because there was no one there except for police, and they
for
just
this to
stood down.
work, for this to work, you need heavy American presence in multiple different areas that are guarding this area, like with a lot of air power, and maybe even people on the ground to make this plan feasible.
I mean, you are going to have a lot of presence. Now, I'm saying this would happen like so you give in the weapons covertly, and then after the operations start and you boom the hell out of them, then you start like.
I don't think you
Actually,
can. I think if you give the weapons covertly, it would be it can only be done on a small scale with like very limited agents on the ground for special operations. Okay, you can't do a mass arming of the Iranian people covertly. You can't.
No, I know. I'm not saying that you do a small amount. You do special ops, and I think for the periphery cities that would be enough to liberate them because they're going to have minimal opposition
It
anyway.
wouldn't be. It wouldn't be if it's not
Okay.
a mass. Yeah, I don't think like it does. That level of arming the Iranian people is good for special operations. It's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough armed Iranians for liberating entire cities. I don't think so.
So some Kurdish cities were liberated in January with the amount of our farms they already have essentially.
Well, liberated is like, I don't know if I call it liberated if you temporarily, basically, if the IRGC temporarily lost control and then they regained it, I wouldn't call it liberated. So,
but if they temporarily lose control of several cities while bombing from the air is ongoing, and you have support from the U.S. and Israel, then
the IRGC doesn't wouldn't come and try to regain cities back while they know something else, something more important is happening. The only thing that is important for them is Tehran, and wherever the Americans are, they're going to focus all their attention on that, and they're going to be like, okay, you have that city for a while, we'll get to you later once the Americans are out.
Right, but they're not.
Yeah,
but they're not going to get to it later because the point is to create the momentum to continue onward from there. Now, I'm not saying this is not the.
But the momentum will not get continued. You will just have the city out of control of the IRGC, while the IRGC knows that I'm not going to spread my forces thin by sending people there. I'm gonna keep focusing on Tehran. This will eventually, Americans will leave. They're not gonna be. I'm gonna focus on my firepower on the Americans, and eventually, one way or another, either they're successful or not, they leave, and then those cities, I'll get to them later. And the amount of arms you gave to those people is not going to be enough for me for them to be able to hold the city forever.
No, not forever, but I think it's better than just Bandar Abbas, because if it's just Bandar Abbas, then they can put all the troops like towards
Bandar
Bandar
Abbas is
Abbas.
better because you actually have Americans there and the American firepower there, and it's easy for Americans to, because these other cities, the support for it will be temporary, right? But Bandar Abbas, the support for it, like the air defense and everything, could continue, right? So you could basically, because you already have the American naval assets there and everything over there, and also the Americans are very eager to free up the Strait of Hormuz anyways, so they have the motivations to continue their military presence around the Bandar Abbas. You wouldn't be able to, it's very difficult for Americans to continue providing air support to an Iranian army that is not being armed enough. If you're spreading it thin, it's not going to be armed enough. So you're going to need continuous support by Americans in multiple cities, all at the same time, right? I think focusing on liberating, basically small bites until you take the whole country.
Okay, so I still have some reservations, but this has been going on for long enough. It's actually not the topic. This was a side thing for what Sketch said. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Sophie, you finally get to speak. Go ahead.
Sorry, Sophie.
Mine was just a quick point of information for clarity, and it echoes what Armin has read earlier. So President Trump's actual statement at the White House was, quote, "We will get it. We don't need it. We don't want it. We'll probably destroy it after we get it, but we're not going to let them have it." And that was reported through Reuters. That's from the White House. Anyway, that's all. Thought it was helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for the actual.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now it's next.
I think when we go in, it's going to be a multiple swarm, air attack, bomb attack, drone attack on all points. So not only Bandar Abbas, but maybe all the islands, everything. So just to overwhelm the IRGC defenses. So I said I would keep it short and sweet to the point, and I'm doing that.
It's okay. You don't have to keep it short yet. We're still doing fine on time. Okay, if you're done, we're going to go to Shauna.
I just wanted to point out really quickly that the other thing we need to be aware of is their friends on American soil, meaning the IRCG, pro-IRCG people
GC.
in America. Sorry, I know that annoys you. Anyway,
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's okay. I was just one. Yeah, it's okay.
Anyway, but we're heading into like protest season in America. I suspect if things get too hot, literally and figuratively, that we could be dealing with their forces, because the best way to get Americans to not be enthusiastic about sending troops or sending forces or doing anything over in the Middle East is to throw violence on the streets in the United States. So it's worked for them multiple times in the past. So I just want to point that out, that they could also create a distraction, as Guy was talking about, sending multiple cities. They could also do that to us. So cause a distraction over here.
Okay, Jeff. Sorry, Jeffrey. He doesn't respond when I call him Jeff.
Yeah, I get where you guys are. I'm going to offer some observations on some of the things that were said. So I very much observe, appreciate, respect what it seems like Guy is trying to do. He's trying to manufacture or amplify paralysis by arming Iranian resistance as a supplemental line or avenue of pressure, right? Coterminously with mass bombing campaigns. I mean, Armin touched on a lot of those issues. The idea of mass, like multiple ground routes, would be, there's like a logistical nightmare. So you got these multiple ground routes, western routes through Iraq, and areas of, Kurdish areas and Shia controlled zones would be an issue. Northwest corridors regarding Turkey and Azerbaijan would probably be an issue. Eastern routes to Afghanistan and Pakistan's Balochistan, I always mispronounce that. Each route crosses territory controlled by governments or militias that are either openly hostile, deeply compromised, or reluctant to allow large-scale arms transit. I mean, they don't really have all that level of control. I'm just saying there's that there. So you have the issue of heavy IRGC border control and detection risk. That's why like land routes was, a lot of us when we looked at it initially were like, ooh, there's challenges there. You have fragmented, unreliable resistance groups. So like that was mentioned too. You have Persian pro-democracy networks, exile groups like the MEK, all this other stuff. Weapons diversion, black market would be an issue. So and the timing and intelligence is an issue. So arming Iranian resistance via multiple ground routes, I get, because people don't want to see another January. I get that. That's why that's the attractiveness, right? It's like a low footprint way to keep pressure on the regime. It's one of the messiest and highest risk options available. It's plagued by geography, hostile borders, fractured opposition, divergent dangers, all kinds of shit. We might end up having to like just mass arm Iranians. Like that's like a last ditch Plan Z like issue, because like, wow, the Mullah regime's going full blown apocalyptic. I don't want to watch Iranians get cut in half. Far as like Bandar Abbas. So it's definitely better than multiple routes. The issue, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Armin. Probably part of that is in response to what a lot of people saw in January, right? You have the idea would be to not only just the training part, like give some place where Iranian resistance to go, run to the green zone. This is a safe area. Here's the challenge with that. And I'm going to cite the Ukrainian Minister of Defense on this. So one of the things we learned, and one of the things the Mullah regime and everybody has now applied, is the operational impact of long-range AI-assisted drones has made both traditional Eastern, like Russian, Chi-Com, mass, and or Western mobility warfare, not only ineffective, tantamount to suicide. If you're above ground and you're seen and you're static, you're dead. So it's better than multiple land routes. Yes, we could put in CRAM. Yes, we'd have to have a lot of air defense and close air support and everything else. And we've definitely moved stuff in like AC-130s, albeit, Jose had talked about like, yeah, you got to be ready for everything. So AC-130s, because of the threat of mad pads, are not going to fly at the altitude where they can use their cannons. That's 7,500 feet. That's because of how they can camp their cannons. Anything above, cannons become a lot harder to use. So you might just arm them with a shitload of Hellfires, which is an alternative like arming profile. Still there's issues there. I mean, the training, you're right about that. The idea of finding there's a reason I keep pushing for training those anti-regime elements away from the line of contact. I know that's not what people want to hear. If I had to go between those two, I'd probably do the Bandar Abbas bit, only because it's a lot less logistically challenging than trying to maintain multiple land routes to infiltrate or deliver enough track 2 material support in mass so that you can sustain areas that have been liberated. Armin wasn't wrong about that. I mean, I get where you're going with it, Guy. It's not an illegitimate thought. Like you're trying to amplify the paralysis, right? We're hitting them with bombs. Now they're having people uprise in different cities. So they're like, where the fuck do they go? No, I totally get that. It's just the devil would be very much in the details in that shit, in either one of those. It very much seems like we are forward based. Like all the indicators show we are locked, cocked, ready to go, and in support of like mass airstrikes, regardless of what happens. Mass airstrikes as the opener it has to be the opener, ideally. Sorry if that was a little like meandering post late lunch food coma.
Okay, and Sketch calls us out.
Yeah, that's why I said this wouldn't happen, right? Like I said, as far as us getting this, remember, this all started with, can we get the uranium while everything is happening? Now it's become a discussion on how to arm the Iranians. This presupposes a lot of things. It presupposes we haven't trained anyone. It presupposes that we didn't get any arms in, and that this whole thing with, oh my God, the Kurds stole the weapons isn't just a lie to make people think we didn't get the weapons in. This presupposes that we haven't been vetting people inside Iran for this for a year. There's a lot of presupposition that makes us have to do everything at the last minute. You would have to completely believe that we were unprepared. We didn't vet anybody. We didn't have people in every city try to vet people. We have to presuppose a lot of things to make all of this training and all of these things start after the bombs drop. Is that so? I don't know. Did we get weapons in? I don't know. Are we already training people? I don't know. And nobody else knows either. So I know there's a lot of doom and gloom and it's going to take forever. And everybody likes to put the worst possible answer. But one of the things I was saying is we're not doing this uranium thing. It's become a discussion about how hard it will be to liberate Iran. Look, I know it's going to be hard, but there are so many presuppositions that we have just been sitting on our hands when it comes to movements inside Iran, when it comes to vetting people, when it comes to arming people, when it comes to training people, things that we're doing with expats, things that we're doing with track 2 material supports. You hear that a lot. What is that? That means the kind of equipment that you need for infantry, for on the ground people, medical, clothes, weapons, food, all that kind of stuff. We are presupposing that none of this has started, none of this is being done, none of the intel is being done, that Mossad isn't doing any vetting of anyone, that we don't. It's like we're starting from scratch. I don't think that's the case either. I'm not going to say that we're super far ahead on this, but we're making an impossible case, and I would hate for anyone in Iran to hear this and think that we have not thought of vetting anyone in any city, that we have not talked to anyone, that not a single weapon has gotten by. I don't believe that. I believe that even in the news, it has been some weapons didn't make it in. So they stole some of the weapons. Why do they keep saying some? I wonder, why in the news do they not say all, or it didn't work? They said some. That changed recently. That makes me think, why would they say that? So I'm just going to use open source intel. This is no state secret because I don't got access to any state secret. I would not trust them that they didn't get anything in. I wouldn't trust them that they haven't identified, vetted, and trained anyone. I would not trust that at all. So if you're in Iran, we're not starting from scratch. There's probably stuff going on. We do have to do a lot after the strikes, but there's gonna be support soon, and there probably is support around. Keep your head on a swivel, right? Stay alert, stay alive, and Javid Shah.
Javid Shah, back at you.
All right, thank you. Okay, John wanted to add like one really quick response, and then we can do super chats.
Hi. Okay. So I guess I was just thinking, and I think it relates to a super chat I sent. I'm Lord Bogart. If Armin, you probably, yeah. Anyway, it's basically just I hear a lot of discussion about whether there will be arms or not. I'm thinking a lot of the Libyan scenario where I don't even know if America directly armed Libyan rebels in the early days, where it was just like guys, defectors or what have you, taking weapons. I mean, in fact, a lot of the early days of the Free Syrian Army were also heavily dependent on regime caches of weapons taken via smuggling, via corruption, etc. There's a lot of ways this could go, and I realize, the Arab Spring revolts were very, very, very different, very, very different culturally, politically, socially than what's going on in Iran right now. But what I'm getting at is, if America were to do an Odyssey Dawn type air campaign, and you see regime control break down in large stretches of territory, where we have a, however chaotic, pro-American faction in some degree of control, our Air Force would probably defend those. It would, I'd like to think at least, would provide some sort of cover, at least from regime assault, if you have some sort of administration. I'm thinking of like Eastern Libya, okay, for the sake of metaphor. It's a bit, but anyway, that's just a thought. I could be totally wrong. As an aside, I've encountered my local Iranian American community here in Boston. They are wonderful people. Just yeah, and thanks to Armin, to you and Susanna for recommending that in the past. Yeah, that's all.
Oh
Bye.
yeah. But by the way, did you also ask this on the chat in the discussion?
That's me. That's
yeah,
me.
okay.
Yeah, I just
Yeah, okay.
yeah. But by the way, Siz de Badar is a really cool little thing. I really like all the little festivals you guys are into.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for your support. I don't know if maybe Jeffrey could respond to this. I don't know if the comparison to what in 2011 you said in the chat.
Libya.
Yep, go on.
It was interesting. So basically, in that case, like Gaddafi's forces were very much on the march in a counteroffensive against the rebel forces, and were closing in directly on like Brega and Benghazi in eastern Libya. They had the upper hand up until NATO.
But that's the difference. But that's the difference right there, because Libya had a massive armed rebel army for on the ground for NATO to support from the air, right? We had that.
This is very true. Yes,
so
yes. I'm saying
that's a huge difference, because we don't have
very
that
true. I'm saying, what if a bunch of policemen in Artesh, or in the event of like a giant uprising happens, and a bunch of like Elam, for example, what happened at Elam?
But even if we have an armed uprising, it's going to be an unarmed uprising right now. Right? We haven't seen anything from the Artesh right now, so that's the main difference.
True.
Okay.
I would say, didn't we have a brief moment in Elam back in January in western Iran near Elam? It was called Elam or Elam. Correct my pronunciation. Where some police stood down. But anyway, I'm just thinking in terms of like
we had some videos showing that the Artesh was basically standing down and being friendly to the protesters. We also don't know if the Artesh even gets weapons anyways right now, right? So the Artesh might be unarmed.
Okay.
The regime doesn't trust the Artesh with weapons, so they wouldn't be able to use their arms to help the people anyways, because they don't have access to it unless they are being told to do something specific, right? So it's not like the Artesh officials have their guns at their home, and at any point they could go and be like, help the Iranian people, right? They're also a lot more limited with what they're able to do compared to IRGC.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Because I know, like with a lot of Arab armies, like that, you'd have like a commander or something defect, or put out a giant defection video with like half of his squad, or you'd see a breakdown of some sort. But yeah, I wasn't as familiar with how centralized the Artesh is around, and how. Yeah.
That's why we want to arm the Iranian people, because anything that you compare it to anywhere else, there was some armed people that the Westerners came and supported, and we don't have that in Iran. So before we could replicate anything resembling any of these other examples in any place, we first need to arm the Iranian people. That's the missing part. That's why we keep saying arm the Iranian people, because that's everything else that you see everywhere else in modern history, where the Americans came, or the Americans, or the Westerners or Israelis came and supported somebody, they supported people who already had guns, and we don't have that in Iran. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, you wanted a quick response from Jeffrey, and then we can move on to super chats.
Yeah, that was I very much appreciate the two examples he brought up, and Armin kind of touched on a couple of the issues. It's not a bad thought. Here's the So the operational differences between U.S. clandestine support to anti-Gaddafi Libyan rebels and the Iranian resistance would come down to geography, risks, and regime strength. So in the interstate war in Libya, they already had, as Armin pointed out, a ready-made rebel army controlling half the country and a weak, isolated dictator. So Iran is a much larger nation, and they don't control half the country like in the light of day, as far and being able to hold ground. So there's that issue. As far as like the Free Syrian Army, I'm glad you actually brought that up, and this is why Armin is what you do with regards to outlining how you have to be very careful as to which groups you arm. I very much appreciate that. So I'm going to share a quick story about the Free Syrian Army and Elizabeth O'Baggy. Maybe people remember her. She was actually one of my case studies when I was doing my postgrad at IWP. Elizabeth O'Baggy, very much a fraud and liar, who said she had a PhD from Georgetown. She did not have any graduate degree at all. She was very much an unregistered agent of influence for the Free Syrian Army. Elizabeth O'Baggy was actually asked to speak on Fox News and asked to speak to the Senate. I mean, she actually fooled Senator McCain, right? I mean, he was dying of his disease, so I give a lot of leeway to Senator McCain. He's a hardcore veteran hero. I'm just saying, old and dying. So Elizabeth O'Baggy very much pushed for us to support the Free Syrian Army. And that had all kinds of challenges with it, right? I mean, you had what? The interstate war in Syria. You have Assad, admittedly Alawite regime, fucked up people, right? Gassing kids. You had the National Opposition Coalition, which had at the time roughly about 27 groups of various types of people. A lot of them were really fucked up. Like Al Nasser was an offshoot of fucking like Al Qaeda. Like there was 3 groups that were like manageably less fucked up. That was like the local courting communities, which were like Syrian grad students. They're very much like Iranians in a lot of way. They don't want to live under an Islamic hellhole, and they don't want to live under the Alawite regime. They didn't last very long. I mean, they got cut in half, right? Because signs don't do really well when you match them up against machine guns. So I'm glad you actually brought up the Free Syrian Army as an example. That again illustrates with track 2 material support why it is that vetting is so very, very important, and why it's very valuable that Armin and others who have a lot more personal connection to that geographic region assist people in trying to better understand the nuances, those demographic nuances. Sorry to take that.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to say thank you, Jeff, because I'll be honest, like I was back then, I was very supportive of those local, morally speaking, of those local coordinating committees and folks like Kaffer and Apple. They were good people. Yeah, it's really sad. But yeah, thank you. But I totally get what you were driving at. Thank you.
Okay, let's catch up on super chats.
All right. We got so many super chats, so let me go through them fast. Thank you guys for all the support. Ida was saying, I'm about to fall asleep, and I know if I come to the discussion group, I will not be able to sleep for hours because you all so fun and knowledgeable and awesome. So I'm staying away. Bye for now. Thank you, Ida. And then we have GTA became a member. Thank you so much for that. And then we had Matthew saying Trump canceled weekend schedule, canceled golf. Okay, that's on all caps, so I have to read it properly. Trump canceled weekend schedule, canceled golf, and not going to son's wedding. It's interesting how you put the canceling of golf in all caps and not the son wedding is not in all caps. So you think that's a bigger deal. Interesting. You might, I mean, I don't know. You might be right about that. Actually, stay at White House this weekend. Boom booms are incoming. Apparently, yep. Maybe that's hopefully you're correct, but we'll see. And then we have Van Die Veld saying, ironic that left blames Trump for deleting Nazis after decades of bragging about deleting Nazis. Any update on school supposedly deleted by USA? It's still under investigation. You're talking about the Minob school. again, if it comes out that it was done by Americans, it was obviously a mistake. It was due to intelligence being outdated regarding that building, which was inside an IRGC base, just not having the update that school was being used for, that building was being used for a school. If it was the Americans, the most important thing that we need to keep mentioning when people bring this up is, first of all, this is being used as a distraction tactic by the regime away from their own crimes against the Iranian people, which is astronomically higher than what happened there. And also the important point that the Americans never would target civilians, and obviously they would never target children. And every war has collateral damage, and it's impossible to keep the civilian casualties to zero. If you want to keep the civilian casualties to zero, you can't do any war ever, which then get rid of your military, I guess, if you want to do no wars ever. So that's what we have to remember. And then also somebody was asking, what if they do an airdrop of weapons into Iran? Just do an airdrop. I just want to answer that. If they do that, the IRGC would get it. If you just do an airdrop of weapons into Iran, IRGC would get it before the Iranians would. And then, yes, this is John here. John saying, okay, but hypothetically, could it be like Libya? We already, so he came here to the group to discuss that. So we covered that. Thank you for the super chat. And then Dominic saying citizens to flee for carpet bombing buffer zone. But what would they carpet bomb if if you announce for citizens to leave an area, then the regime would leave it as well. So what would you have to carpet bomb? I mean, maybe you should just call, like, maybe instead of calling it carpet bombing, call it like a death zone. The Amu Lindsay was mentioning, he was basically coming up with an area of death zone that everybody has to leave. So you don't need to carpet bomb it. You just need to tell people, anybody who enters this zone, you will take them out. You could do that instead. And then we have Fleshy Interloper saying stock market closed. Yes, I saw also Kat Miowski also mentioning that stock market is closed. So a lot of people were hoping to see the military operations to start when the market is closed. So now in the next 48 hours, we're going to see if the stock market closing is going to have any impact on the Americans actually going into war. InServer was mentioning that Jeffrey needs honorary Iranian citizenship and SAVAK 2.0 Medal of Honor. So I'm not in charge of the second one, but I think Goldie said that I can do that on the first one. So Jeffrey, I'm going to give you honorary Iranian citizenship. So hopefully other people will also be able to give you a SAVAK 2.0 Medal of Honor. Yes, and people appreciate you on the YouTube chat. And I see a lot of comments when people are appreciating your takes. Jedi saying, do you have a Patreon account to direct donate? Well, we do have, but actually, if you, Jedi, the best way to support us is actually to join the community here, because the discussion group, you could become a premium or a VIP member, because the school community here actually takes the smallest percentage than anybody, smaller percentage than YouTube, Patreon. So that would be the best way to support us if you wanted to. They take so little. So and then you get the benefits of being part of the community as well. And thank you so much for wanting to support us. And yeah, I mean, we have a Patreon, but it's called Atheist Republic. I have to go rebrand all of that.